They say the most dangerous woman in the room isn't the one screaming, it's the one who stays silent. Jessica thought she had secured the ultimate bag. She had the diamond, the mansion, and the man. She watched the wife, Olivia, sign the divorce papers and walk out of the building with nothing but a briefcase, looking defeated. Jessica popped the champagne, thinking the war was over. She didn't realize that Olivia hadn't surrendered. She was just reloading. You are about to hear a story of cold-blooded revenge, corporate warfare, and the moment a mistress realized that stealing a husband is easy, but keeping an empire requires a queen. This is The Mistress Thought She Won. The ink on the settlement papers was barely dry when Jessica Monroe posted the photo to Instagram. It was subtle, of course, just her manicured hand resting on Daniel's knee, a flute of vintage Dom Perignon in the foreground, and the caption, "New Beginnings." But everyone in the tight-knit circle of New York's venture capital elite knew exactly what it meant. It meant Olivia Sterling was out. It meant Jessica Monroe, the 26-year-old marketing assistant with the ambitious eyes, was in. Inside the glass-walled conference room, on the 45th floor of the Etheris Global Building, the atmosphere was suffocating. Daniel Sterling, the CEO, sat at the head of the mahogany table, loosening his tie. He looked like a man who had just run a marathon and won by a fraction of a second. Across from him sat Olivia. She was 42, though she looked 10 years younger, thanks to a rigorous regimen of Pilates and sheer icy discipline. She wore a charcoal suit that cost more than Jessica's car. Her face was unreadable. No tears, no screaming, no begging. "So that's it then," Daniel said, his voice trying to sound authoritative, but cracking slightly. "You keep the Hamptons property and the liquid assets in the joint trust. I keep the company the voting rights and the penthouse." Olivia picked up her pen. It was a Mont Blanc, heavy and black. She looked at the papers, then up at Daniel. Her eyes were like the calm surface of a deep, freezing lake. "You're sure this is what you want, Daniel?" she asked. Her voice was terrifyingly level. "Total control of Etheris. No board oversight from me." "It's best for everyone," Daniel said, glancing at his phone where Jessica was undoubtedly texting him. "We've grown apart, Olivia. You're too cautious. You hold the company back. Jessica, she brings fresh energy. She understands the modern market." Olivia didn't flinch at the mention of the mistress. She simply nodded, signed the document with a flourish, and capped her pen. "Very well," she said. "I release my seat on the board, effective immediately. Etheris is all yours, Daniel. Good luck." She stood up, smoothed her skirt, and walked out. She didn't look back. She didn't slam the door. The click of the latch was the loudest sound in the room. Down in the lobby, Jessica was waiting. She saw Olivia step out of the elevator. Jessica straightened her spine, preparing for a confrontation. She wanted Olivia to yell at her. She wanted Olivia to call her a home wrecker. She wanted the validation of knowing she had destroyed this woman. But Olivia walked right past her. She didn't even blink. It was as if Jessica was a piece of furniture, a decorative plant in the lobby unworthy of notice. Jessica felt a flash of anger. "Look at me," she thought. "I took your life." "Olivia." Jessica called out, her voice echoing in the marble lobby. Olivia stopped. She turned slowly. "Enjoy the view." "Jessica," Olivia said softly. "The air is very thin at the top. Make sure you don't suffocate." Then she walked out the revolving doors and into a waiting black sedan. Jessica shook off the chill that ran down her spine. She rushed into the elevator, swiping the keycard. Daniel had given her the keycard that used to be Olivia's. When she reached the executive suite, Daniel was pouring whiskey. "Did she sign?" Jessica asked, breathless. "It's done." Daniel grinned, pulling her into a hug. She's gone. She took the cash payout and ran. The company is ours, Jess. No more checking in with her. No more safety protocols. We can finally expand into the Asian tech markets like I wanted. Jessica squealed and kissed him. I told you, baby. She didn't understand your vision. She was old news. We're going to be the power couple of the city. That night, they celebrated at Le Bernardin. Jessica ordered the most expensive items on the menu, laughing too loudly. She felt like she had won the lottery. She imagined herself as the new matriarch of Etheris Global, attending galas, hosting charity events, and being the woman behind the man. She didn't notice that Daniel was drinking more than usual. She didn't notice the way the waiter looked at them, not with admiration, but with the discreet judgment of service staff who had known Olivia for 15 years. And she certainly didn't know that 3 blocks away in a dimly lit office at a rival firm, Olivia Sterling was sitting opposite Arthur Pendleton, the most ruthless corporate litigator in the city. Did he take the bait? Arthur asked, sliding a thick file across the desk. Olivia took a sip of sparkling water. Hook, line, and sinker. He demanded full control. He stripped the safety clauses just to get me out the door faster. Arthur smiled, a shark-like baring of teeth. Then he has removed his own armor. The non-compete clause in your original contract, it was tied to your board seat. Since you resigned voluntarily at his request, it's void, Olivia finished. Precisely. You are a free agent, Olivia. And looking at these financials, Etheris is leveraged to the hilt. Daniel has been hiding debt in shell companies. Without your capital management, he'll bleed out in 6 months. Olivia looked out the window at the skyline she helped build. 6 months. You give him too much credit, Arthur. Daniel is a man who thinks spending money is the same as making it. He has Jessica now. She has expensive taste. Olivia stood up. Initiate phase 2. Let's see how much he likes his fresh energy when the bills come due. 3 months. That was all it took for the gloss to wear off. The reality of being the CEO's partner was very different from what Jessica had imagined. She thought it would be galas and magazine covers. Instead, it was damage control. Jessica was sitting in the master bedroom of the penthouse Olivia's old bedroom, staring at a pile of receipts. She had redecorated the entire house, replacing Olivia's elegant minimalist beige and cream tones with loud modern art and velvet furniture. It looked expensive, but it felt chaotic. Daniel, you promised we'd go to the Met Gala this year. Jessica whined as Daniel paced the room, his phone pressed to his ear. Not now, Jess, Daniel snapped, covering the microphone. I'm losing the Singapore deal. He turned back to the phone, his voice pitching higher. What do you mean they pulled out? We had a handshake agreement. Who did they go with? Who is Helix Capital? I've never even heard of them. He threw his phone onto the bed. It bounced off the duvet and hit Jessica's leg. I'll watch it, she yelled. Do you have any idea what just happened? Daniel ran his hands through his thinning hair. He looked tired. The charisma that had seduced Jessica was fading, replaced by the sweaty desperation of a man in over his head. That deal was supposed to plug the hole in our Q3 earnings. Without it, the stock is going to tank. So fix it, Jessica said dismissively, checking her nails. You're the genius, right? That's what you always said. Olivia was holding you back. Now you're free. Daniel looked at her, and for the first time, Jessica saw something ugly in his eyes. Regret. Olivia knew the Singapore investors, he muttered. She knew their wives. She sent them gifts on their children's birthdays. She managed the relationships. Well, I can do that. Jessica stood up, offended. I'm great with people. You're great at spending money, Jessica, Daniel shouted. Do you know how much the renovation cost? Do you know how much you dropped at Hermes last week? The board is breathing down my neck. They're asking why our operational costs are up 20% while revenue is flat. Don't talk to me like that, Jessica screamed back. I am your wife, well fiancé. You haven't even set a date yet. I have a company to save. Daniel stormed out of the room, slamming the door. Jessica sat back down, fuming. She pulled out her phone and Googled Helix Capital. It was a new firm, barely 2 months old. Private equity, ghostly, no listed CEO, just a registered agent in Delaware. They had been popping up everywhere lately, snatching contracts right out from under Etheris Global's nose. She didn't understand the business side, and she didn't care to. She just knew that Daniel was stressed, and he was taking it out on her. He'll get over it, she told herself. He just needs to land a big win. But the win didn't come. A month later, the crisis arrived. It started with a leak. Someone had leaked the internal memos regarding Etheris Global's debt to the Wall Street Journal. The stock price plummeted 15% in a single morning. Daniel was in full panic mode. He called an emergency meeting with the board of directors. Jessica insisted on coming along. I need to be there to support you, she said, putting on a tight red dress that was entirely inappropriate for a crisis meeting. Besides, I'm the future of this brand. Daniel was too weak to say no. The boardroom was cold. The board members, mostly old men in grey suits who had trusted Olivia implicitly, looked at Daniel with open hostility. They looked at Jessica with disgust. This is a disaster, Daniel. Evelyn Carter, the longest-serving board member, said. She slammed a folder on the table. Our creditors are calling in the loans. We have a liquidity crunch. We cannot make payroll next month. I have a plan, Daniel stammered. I'm talking to a private investor, a white knight. They're interested in a majority buyout. It would save the company. Who is this investor? Evelyn asked sharply. They represent a consortium, very private, but they have the capital. They're willing to inject $200 million immediately, Daniel said, trying to sound confident. The signing is today. They're on their way up now. Jessica squeezed Daniel's hand under the table. See, she whispered, loudly enough for Evelyn to hear. He saved it. Evelyn rolled her eyes. The heavy oak doors of the boardroom opened. Ah, they're here, Daniel said, standing up and buttoning his jacket. He put on his best winning smile. Gentlemen, welcome to Etheris. He froze. 2 lawyers in sharp black suits walked in, first holding briefcases. They stood aside, flanking the door like guards. Then a woman walked in. She was wearing a white power suit that glowed under the recessed lighting. Her heels clicked with a rhythmic military precision on the hardwood floor. Her hair was cut shorter, sharper. She looked radiant, powerful, and utterly terrifying. It was Olivia. The room went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Jessica's mouth fell open. She dropped her purse. Daniel looked like he had seen a ghost. Olivia. What are you doing here? Olivia didn't look at him. She walked to the head of the table, the opposite end from where Daniel stood. She placed her handbag on the table. I believe you were expecting the representative from Helix Capital, Olivia asked. Her voice was smooth, like velvet wrapped around a dagger. Yes, but... Daniel's eyes widened as the realization hit him like a freight train. Helix. Helix. H-E-L. Helix, Olivia interrupted. A spiral. A structure that builds upon itself. Or in this case, a holding company I established the day I left this building. She looked around the room, making eye contact with every board member. Evelyn Carter was smiling. Smiling. You, Jessica shrieked, standing up. You're the investor. You don't have that kind of money. Daniel gave you a pittance. Olivia finally turned her gaze to Jessica. It was a look of profound pity. Daniel gave me the liquid assets, Olivia explained calmly. But he forgot that my family didn't just come from money. We came from influence. And I invested wisely. More importantly, I didn't spend my money on redecorating penthouses. I spent it on acquiring your debt. She turned back to Daniel. I bought your loans, Daniel. Every single one. The bank was happy to offload them once the Wall Street Journal article came out. An article, I might add, that was very informative. Daniel sank into his chair. You bought the debt. I own your debt, which means I own you, Olivia said. She signaled to the lawyers. One of them stepped forward and placed a document in front of Daniel. This is a transfer of ownership, the lawyer said. In exchange for debt forgiveness and an infusion of capital to save the company from bankruptcy, Helix Capital, and by extension, Ms. Olivia Sterling, will assume 51% controlling interest in Etheris Global. You will step down as CEO immediately. You can't do this, Daniel shouted, his face turning purple. I built this company. We built this company, Daniel. Olivia corrected him, her voice hard as steel. I wrote the code. I negotiated the contracts. I managed the board. You just shook hands and took the credit. And the moment I left you, drove it into the ground. I won't sign, Daniel spat. Then I foreclose. Olivia shrugged. The company dissolves. You go bankrupt. You lose the penthouse, the cars, and her. She gestured vaguely at Jessica. I imagine Jessica won't stick around for a man living in a rented one-bedroom apartment in Queens. Jessica looked at Daniel, then at Olivia, then back at Daniel. The fear in her eyes was real. She liked the lifestyle. She didn't sign up for bankruptcy. Daniel, Jessica whispered, sign it. Please, don't lose the money. Daniel looked at his mistress, the woman he had blown up his life for begging him to surrender to his ex-wife. The humiliation was total. With a shaking hand, Daniel picked up the pen. Good choice, Olivia said. As he signed, Olivia walked over to the head of the table, Daniel's spot. She waited. Daniel stood up, defeated. He shuffled to the side. Olivia sat down in the CIO's chair. It fit her perfectly. Now, Olivia said, interlacing her fingers. First order of business. Security, please escort Mr. Sterling and Miss Monroe out of the building. Their access passes have already been deactivated. Wait, I need to get my things, Jessica cried. Anything you bought with company funds, which looking at the audit is everything stays, Olivia said coldly. You may leave with what you came in with, which if I recall was very little. Two large security guards stepped forward. As Jessica was being ushered out, she looked back at Olivia. Olivia was already speaking to Evelyn Carter, discussing Q4 projections, completely ignoring them. But the drama wasn't over. As the elevator doors closed on Jessica and Daniel, the silence between the lovers was heavy. I can't believe you let her do that, Jessica hissed at Daniel. Daniel looked at her with pure loathing. Shut up, Jessica. Just shut up. Olivia watched the elevator numbers go down. She allowed herself a small, private smile. But she knew this wasn't the end. Daniel was weak, but he was proud. And a wounded animal is the most dangerous kind. She turned to her lawyer, Arthur. Watch them, she said quietly. Daniel won't accept this. He'll try to fight back, and he'll play dirty. We're ready, Arthur said. Olivia tapped the mahogany table. The mistress thought she won the prize. She didn't realize the prize was a bomb, and I was the one holding the detonator. The suite at the Four Seasons was luxurious, but it wasn't home. For Jessica, it felt like a cage. It had been 2 weeks since the boardroom coup. 2 weeks of living out of suitcases because Olivia had legally locked down the penthouse for asset valuation. Daniel was burning through his remaining cash reserves at an alarming rate, refusing to stay anywhere less than 5 stars, convinced this was just a temporary setback. Stop pacing, Daniel. You're making me dizzy, Jessica snapped from the sofa. She was scrolling through her phone, her thumb moving aggressively over the screen. Daniel stopped and poured himself another drink from the hotel minibar. At 11 a.m. "I have a meeting with Slater in an hour," Daniel muttered. "He says we have a case. Wrongful termination. Hostile takeover under false pretenses. We can sue her for the company back, or at least for a massive settlement." Jessica scoffed. "You don't have the money to pay Slater. He charges $1,000 an hour. He's taking it on contingency." Daniel shouted, his face flushing red. "He knows I'm good for it. Once we crush Olivia, we get everything back. She can't just walk in and steal my legacy." "Technically," Jessica murmured, eyeing a notification on her phone. "She bought it." "Whose side are you on?" Daniel turned on her, his eyes wild. "You wanted the lifestyle, Jess. You wanted the black card. Then help me fight her. Instead, you're just sitting there on TikTok." Jessica stood up, her eyes narrowing. She walked over to Daniel, grabbed the glass of whiskey from his hand, and slammed it onto the table. "I'm fighting you, idiot. While you're playing lawyer with some ambulance chaser, I'm fighting the war where it actually matters." She turned her phone screen toward him. It was a draft of a video. The caption read, "The truth about being silenced, how his ex-wife ruined our lives." "The courts take years, Daniel," Jessica said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "The internet takes minutes. Olivia relies on her reputation. She's the ice queen, right? The competent one, the stable one. What happens to Etheris stock when the world thinks the new CEO is a vindictive, unstable woman who manipulated her way to the top just to spite her ex-husband?" Daniel looked at the phone, then at Jessica. A slow, cruel smile spread across his face. "You're going to play the victim," he said. "I'm going to be the survivor," Jessica corrected. "I'm the young woman in love who was targeted by a jealous, older, powerful billionaire. The narrative writes itself. Gen Z will eat her alive. Greg Slater was exactly the kind of lawyer you hired when you knew you were guilty, but wanted to cause as much damage as possible on the way down. He worked out of a strip mall office in Jersey, but he wore Brioni suits and had a reputation for being a pit bull. It's a strong angle," Slater said, leaning back in his chair and tapping a pen against his teeth. "We file a suit claiming she used confidential marital information to manipulate the stock price before the divorce was finalized. That's insider trading adjacent. It's messy. It won't stick, but the discovery phase will be humiliating for her. We'll subpoena her emails, her texts, everything. I want her destroyed," Daniel said, his hands shaking. "I want her to feel what I felt in that boardroom." "We can do that," Slater grinned. "But the retainer is $50,000, up front." Daniel hesitated. He didn't have $50,000 liquid. Olivia had frozen the joint accounts, and his personal accounts were drained from the Singapore deal that never happened. I can get it," Daniel lied. He walked out of the office and called his broker. "Sell the vintage Porsche collection. Yes, I know the market is down. Just sell them. Today." While Daniel was liquidating the last of his toys, Jessica pressed post. The video was a masterpiece of manipulation. Jessica sat on the hotel bed, wearing no makeup, looking pale and fragile. She spoke with a soft, trembling voice. "I never wanted to bring this public," she whispered to the camera. "But I'm scared. Olivia Sterling, the CEO of Etheris. She didn't just take the company. She took our home. She threw us on the street. She's using her billions to bully us because I fell in love with her husband after their marriage was already dead. She's threatened us. I don't know what she'll do next." She squeezed out a single, perfect tear at the end. Within 4 hours, the video had 2 million views. The hashtag #BoycottEtheris began trending on Twitter. Comments flooded in, calling Olivia a monster, a witch, and a corporate tyrant. Jessica watched the numbers climb, feeling a rush of power she hadn't felt since the day Olivia signed the divorce papers. Olivia might have the boardroom, but Jessica had the mob. The atmosphere at Etheris Global was tense. The PR department was in a full-blown meltdown. Phones were ringing off the hook with reporters asking for comments on Jessica Monroe's viral allegations. Olivia sat in her office, formerly Daniel's office, watching the skyline. She looked calm, almost bored. "Olivia, we have to issue a statement," Arthur Pendleton said, pacing the room. "The stock is down 4% this morning. The board is getting jittery. Evelyn Carter called me 3 times. She wants to know why we aren't suing Jessica for defamation." Olivia swiveled her chair around. "No statement." "Olivia, please," Arthur pleaded. "Silence looks like guilt." "Silence looks like confidence," Olivia corrected. "If I engage with a 26-year-old Instagram model, I bring myself down to her level. I validate her story. I am the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I do not bicker on TikTok." "But the damage is temporary," Olivia said firmly. "Jessica is fighting with emotions. I am fighting with math. How is the forensic audit coming along?" Arthur stopped pacing. He sighed and opened his briefcase. "It's worse than we thought." He slid a thick binder across the desk. "We knew Daniel was hiding debt," Arthur explained. "But we thought it was just bad business decisions. It wasn't. It was theft." Olivia opened the binder. Her eyes scanned the columns of numbers. "He set up a consulting firm called Monroe Creative Solutions," Arthur continued. "He's been funneling company money into it for 18 months. Long before he asked for the divorce, he billed Etheris for marketing consultations that never happened. The invoices are fake. The total is nearly $3 million. Olivia ran her finger down the page. "And where did the money go? Rent on a Soho apartment for Jessica before she moved in with him. Jewelry, trips to the Maldives, and a substantial down payment on a yacht that is currently docked in Miami." Olivia closed the binder. A cold fury settled in her chest. She wasn't angry about the affair. She had processed that grief a year ago. She was angry that Daniel had stolen from her work, from her employees, to fund his midlife crisis. "This isn't just a civil matter, Arthur," Olivia said quietly. "This is embezzlement. This is wire fraud." "Yes," Arthur nodded gravely. "If we turn this over to the SEC and the district attorney Daniel goes to prison, minimum 5 years." Olivia looked at the binder. "And Jessica? She's listed as the sole proprietor of Monroe Creative Solutions. She signed the invoices. She cashed the checks. She's a co-conspirator. She goes down with him." Olivia stood up and walked to the window. She watched the ant-like cars moving on the streets below. "They want a war," Olivia whispered. "They want to drag my name through the mud to get a settlement. They have no idea that they've handed me the handcuffs." "Shall I call the DA?" Arthur asked, reaching for his phone. "Not yet," Olivia said. She turned back, a dangerous glint in her eye. "Daniel is proud. If I threaten him with jail, he might run. He might flee the country. We need to corner the rat before we close the trap." "How? Jessica," Olivia said. "She's not loyal to Daniel. She's loyal to the lifestyle. And right now, she's realizing that Daniel can't provide it anymore." Olivia pressed the intercom button on her desk. "Send in the head of IT security, please." 3 days later, the pressure on Daniel was mounting. The lawsuit Slater filed had been met with a devastating motion to dismiss from Olivia's legal team burying Slater in paperwork he couldn't handle. Daniel was day-drinking more heavily. He was snappy, irritable, and paranoid. He had started blaming Jessica for the backlash against his reputation, claiming her video made him look weak. Jessica was sitting in the hotel lobby, wearing dark sunglasses, trying to avoid the paparazzi she had summoned. She was scrolling through her phone when she received a DM on Instagram. It was from a generic account, no profile picture. Ms. Monroe. Regarding Monroe Creative Solutions. We know you signed the invoices. The FBI handles wire fraud, not divorce court. If you want to avoid federal prison, come to the service entrance of the Atheris building at 8 o'clock. Mash. Come alone. Don't tell Daniel. Jessica felt the blood drain from her face. She dropped her phone. Monroe Creative Solutions. She remembered signing those papers. Daniel had told her it was just tax optimization. He told her it was how she would get her allowance without Olivia seeing it on the joint account. She didn't know it was illegal. Or maybe she did and just didn't care at the time. She looked up toward the elevators where Daniel was passed out in the suite. He was broke. He was useless. And now he was going to drag her to jail. Jessica made a decision. At 7:55 p.m., she slipped out the side door of the hotel. She wore a hoodie and kept her head down. She took a taxi, paying cash. When she arrived at the Atheris service entrance, a security guard was waiting. He didn't speak. He simply held open the door and led her to the freight elevator. The ride up to the 45th floor was silent. Jessica's heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The elevator opened directly into the executive suite. The office was dark, lit only by the city lights outside and a single desk lamp. Olivia was sitting there. She didn't stand up. "Sit," Olivia said, gesturing to a simple wooden chair in front of the desk. Jessica sat. She tried to muster some of her usual bratty confidence, but it withered under Olivia's gaze. "You wanted to see me?" Jessica asked, her voice trembling. "I wanted to save the taxpayers the cost of a trial," Olivia said. She slid a single piece of paper across the desk. It was a photocopy of a check for $50,000, signed by Jessica Monroe, billed to Atheris Global for brand strategy. "I didn't know," Jessica blurted out. "Daniel told me to sign it. He said it was his money." "It was company money," Olivia said. "Shareholders' money. My money. That is grand larceny, Jessica. And because the checks crossed state lines, it's federal." Jessica began to cry. Not the fake tears for TikTok. Real, ugly, terrified tears. "I'm 26. I can't go to prison. Please." "Olivia, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about Daniel. You can have him back. I don't want him." Olivia laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "I don't want him back, you foolish girl. I'm trying to decide if I should destroy you." Jessica fell to her knees. "I'll do anything. I'll recant the video. I'll tell everyone I lied. I'll testify against him. Just don't send me to jail." Olivia leaned back in the shadows. This was the moment. She had the mistress on her knees, begging. It was the ultimate victory. But Olivia Sterling was a businesswoman, not a sadist. She didn't want blood. She wanted total security for her company. "Get up," Olivia commanded. Jessica scrambled back into the chair, wiping her mascara-stained face. "You are going to record a new video," Olivia said. "You are going to admit that you and Daniel conspired to smear my reputation because you were angry about the settlement. You are going to admit that Daniel is broke and unstable." "Okay, I'll do it," Jessica nodded frantically. "And," Olivia added, "you are going to give me the password to Daniel's cloud storage, the private one, the one he thinks I don't know about." Jessica hesitated. He keeps everything in there, not just the money stuff, personal stuff, videos. I don't care about his videos, Olivia said with disgust. I want the communications with the shell companies. I want the proof that he was the architect of the fraud, so when the police come, they know exactly who the mastermind was. Jessica pulled out her phone. Her fingers shook as she typed out a password and airdropped it to Olivia. Done, Jessica whispered. Am I safe? Will you let me go? Olivia looked at the received file. She opened it on her laptop. It was all there. The emails, the bank transfers, the recordings of Daniel, bragging about skimming off the top. It was the nail in his coffin. You're not going to prison, Jessica, Olivia said. Jessica let out a sob of relief. But, Olivia continued, her eyes hard, you are leaving New York tonight. If I see you in this city or on social media mentioning my name ever again, I hand this file to the FBI. Do we understand each other? Yes. Yes, I promise. Go. Jessica ran. She ran out of the office, down the freight elevator, and out into the night. She went straight to the hotel, packed a single bag, while Daniel slept and left the ring on the nightstand. She was on a bus to Ohio by midnight. Olivia sat alone in the office. She picked up the phone and dialed Arthur. I have the evidence, she said. Daniel is alone. Jessica has turned. File the criminal complaint. Tonight, Arthur asked. Tonight, Olivia said. Let him wake up to sirens. The morning sun hit Daniel Sterling's face like a physical blow. He groaned, rolling over in the king-sized bed of the Four Seasons suite, reaching instinctively for the warm body that should have been next to him. His hand hit empty sheets. Cold sheets. Jess, he croaked, his voice raspy from the previous night's whiskey. Silence. He sat up, his head pounding. The suite was messy room service trays from yesterday, discarded clothes, empty bottles. But it felt different. It felt abandoned. Jessica! He yelled louder this time. He stumbled out of bed and walked to the bathroom. Empty. The closet. Empty. Her suitcases, her clothes, her ludicrously expensive makeup kit, all gone. He ran back to the bedroom. On the nightstand, sitting mockingly next to a half-empty bottle of Macallan, was the engagement ring. It was a 5-carat oval diamond he had bought on credit 2 weeks ago, convinced the Singapore deal would cover it. She hadn't just left. She had resigned. You ungrateful little, Daniel muttered, grabbing his phone to call her. 0 bars. No service. He frowned. He checked the Wi-Fi. Account suspended. A knot of pure dread tightened in his stomach. He went to the landline hotel phone. Dead air. Daniel threw on a bathrobe and opened the door to the hallway, intending to march down to the concierge and scream at someone until they fixed his service. He froze. At the far end of the hallway near the elevators, 2 uniformed NYPD officers were talking to the hotel manager. The manager pointed a shaking finger toward Daniel's suite. Daniel slammed the door shut and locked it. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. They're here. He scrambled backward, tripping over a suitcase. He knew what this was. Olivia? She hadn't just sued him. She had dropped the hammer. Think, Daniel, think. He couldn't go out the front. He ran to the window, 40 floors up. No balcony. He looked around the room wildly. His eyes landed on the service hatch near the entryway, a small door used by staff to deliver laundry and collect trays without entering the room fully. It was tight, but he was desperate. He heard the heavy boots approaching his door. Knock. 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 Mr. Sterling, police. Open up. Daniel didn't answer. He grabbed his wallet, his shoes, and the pants he had worn yesterday. He squeezed himself into the service hatch, pushing through into the narrow utility corridor behind the walls. It smelled of dust and old linen. "Open the door or we will breach," the officer shouted. Daniel shimmied down the dark shaft, scraping his elbows, adrenaline masking the pain. He found a service elevator used for housekeeping carts. He hit the button for the basement. As the elevator descended, Daniel pulled on his pants and shoes. He looked at his reflection in the polished metal doors. He looked deranged. His eyes were bloodshot, his stubble was greying, and he was sweating profusely. He wasn't the CEO of Etheris Global anymore. He was a fugitive. The elevator dinged at the loading dock. Daniel sprinted past a confused delivery driver unloading crates of produce. He burst out onto 57th Street, blending into the morning pedestrian rush. He kept his head down, walking fast. He needed money. He needed a lawyer who wasn't afraid of the feds. But mostly he needed leverage. He stopped at a newsstand and saw it. The New York Post front page. Fraudster CEO warrant issued for Daniel Sterling. Insider sources confirm former Etheris chief embezzled millions. Mistress cooperates with FBI. The world spun. Jessica had flipped. That's why she left the ring. She had sold him out to save her own skin. Rage, hot and blinding, flooded his system. It replaced the fear. He had nothing left. No money. No woman. No reputation. But he still had one thing. He knew the Etheris building better than Olivia did. He knew the blind spots in the security grid. And he knew about the Ghost Drive, a server backup, located physically in the penthouse office unrelated to the cloud. If he could get to the office, he could wipe the servers. He could hold the company's source code hostage. He could burn Olivia's empire to the ground unless she gave him a jet and a suitcase of cash. He hailed a taxi. "Financial district," he barked, "and step on it." The Etheris Global headquarters was a fortress of glass and steel piercing the grey sky. Olivia Sterling stood in her office, looking at the storm clouds gathering over the Hudson River. "He's not in the hotel," Arthur Pendleton said, his voice tense over the speakerphone. The police breached the room. It was empty. He must have slipped out the service exit. "He's coming here," Olivia said calmly. "You need to evacuate Olivia," Arthur urged. "Daniel is unstable. He has nothing to lose. He's dangerous." "I have security, Arthur. I'm not leaving my company," Olivia replied. "If he comes here, it ends here." She hung up. She looked at the clock, 7:45 p.m. The building was mostly empty, save for the cleaning crews and the night security team. Olivia sat down at her desk. She opened her laptop and pulled up the security camera feeds. She watched the lobby, the elevators, the parking garage. Nothing. Then a flicker on screen, 4. The basement maintenance entrance. It was an old door rarely used that connected to the subway tunnels. Daniel had insisted on keeping it accessible for emergencies years ago. She saw a figure in a dark hoodie pry the lock open. It was clumsy, desperate. Olivia didn't call security immediately. She watched him. He moved through the basement corridors, avoiding the main cameras heading for the freight elevator. He was coming up. She reached into a desk drawer. She didn't pull out a weapon. She pulled out a single, silver USB drive. Ding! The freight elevator doors at the back of the executive suite slid open. Daniel stepped out. He was wet from the rain, shivering, and looked like a man possessed. He held a heavy metal wrench he must have grabbed from the basement. "Hello, Daniel," Olivia said. She didn't stand up. She didn't raise her voice. Daniel froze. He looked around the office, his office, or what used to be his. It was different now. Cleaner. Sharper. The smell of his cigars was gone, replaced by white tea and sage. "You," Daniel breathed, his chest heaving. "You took everything." "I took back what was mine," Olivia corrected. You gave it away piece by piece for an ego boost and a pair of legs. Daniel advanced into the room, gripping the wrench. You think you're so smart, Olivia. You think you've won. You don't know about the ghost drive. He marched toward the wall, safe hidden behind a painting Olivia had already replaced. He ripped the new canvas off the wall, revealing the steel safe door. I'm going to wipe it. Daniel snarled, his fingers punching in the code. The source code for the AI, the client database, the proprietary algorithms, all of it is backed up here, and I programmed a kill switch. If I enter the command, Etheris becomes a billion-dollar paperweight. The safe beeped. It opened. Daniel reached in triumph, lighting up his haggard face. It was empty. He froze. He patted the inside of the safe. Nothing. Just cold steel. Looking for this? Olivia asked. Daniel spun around. Olivia was holding the silver USB drive between two fingers, twirling it casually. The ghost drive, Olivia said. Did you really think I didn't know I wrote the architecture for this building's network, Daniel? I knew about your secret backup before you even installed it. I had IT remove the hardware 3 days ago. Daniel dropped the wrench. It clattered loudly on the hardwood floor. No, he whispered. No. It's over, Olivia said. Jessica gave the FBI everything. Your accounts are seized. Your passport is flagged. There is no deal to be made. There is no escape. Daniel looked at her, and for a moment the rage vanished, leaving only a pathetic, crushing sadness. He looked small. Olivia, he pleaded, his voice cracking. We were partners. 20 years. Doesn't that mean anything? I made a mistake. A midlife crisis. I can fix it. Don't send me to prison. I'll die in there. He took a step toward her, hands open, begging, Please. I'm your husband. Olivia stood up then. She walked around the desk, standing just out of his reach. She looked at the man she had once loved. She saw the fear in his eyes, the selfishness that had rotted him from the inside out. You were my husband, Olivia said softly. But then you became a liability. She pressed a button on her phone. The doors to the suite burst open. 6 police officers and 2 security guards rushed in, guns drawn. Daniel Sterling, hands in the air. Now. Daniel looked at the police, then back at Olivia. He realized finally that she hadn't been waiting for him to talk. She had been stalling him until they arrived. Olivia! He screamed as the officers tackled him to the ground. Olivia, help me! Don't let them take me! Olivia watched as they handcuffed him. She watched as they hauled him up, reading him his Miranda rights. He was weeping now, a broken man, shouting her name. She didn't look away. She forced herself to watch every second of it. She owed it to herself. As they dragged him into the elevator, the room fell silent again. Olivia stood alone in the center of the office. Her heart was beating fast, but her hands were steady. Arthur walked in a moment later. He looked at the empty safe, then at the wrench on the floor. Are you all right? Arthur asked gently. Olivia walked over to the window. The rain was lashing against the glass, blurring the lights of the city. I'm fine, Arthur, she said. He's gone, Arthur said. It's done. You won. Olivia looked at her reflection in the dark glass. She didn't feel triumphant. She didn't feel happy. She felt light. The weight of the last year, the lies, the betrayal, the cleanup was finally gone. Yes, Olivia said, turning back to her desk. I won. She picked up the silver USB drive and dropped it into her purse. Now, she said, her voice returning to its usual professional crispness. Call the PR team. We need to draft a press release about the leadership stability of Etheris Global. And Arthur. Yes, Olivia. Order me a salad. I'm starving. The grand ballroom at the Plaza Hotel had not seen a night like this in a decade. The air smelled of expensive perfume, fresh orchids, and the specific electric scent of power. It was the Titans of Industry Gala, an event where the entry ticket cost more than most people's cars. In the past, Olivia had attended this event as Daniel Sterling's wife, a silent accessory in beige silk standing 2 steps behind him, while he charmed investors and laughed too loudly at bad jokes. Tonight, she walked in alone. The silence that rippled through the room wasn't awkward. It was reverent. Olivia wore a custom-tailored tuxedo gown in midnight velvet, a sharp contrast to the sea of sequined dresses. Her hair was swept back, revealing the only jewelry she wore, a simple diamond solitaire necklace. It was the first thing she had bought with her own dividends after the takeover. Olivia, Olivia over here. The paparazzi line was a frenzy. Flashbulbs popped like lightning storms. Arthur Pendleton, looking dapper in a black tie, met her at the top of the stairs. He offered her his arm, not as a handler, but as a lieutenant. "You're late," Arthur murmured with a smile. "A queen is never late, Arthur," Olivia replied, her voice calm. "Everyone else is simply early." They moved into the room, and the dynamic was undeniable. The same board members who had looked at her with skepticism 6 months ago now parted like the Red Sea. Evelyn Carter approached, holding a glass of champagne. "Olivia, the Q3 reports came out this morning. A 22% increase in efficiency since the restructuring. The shareholders are calling it the Sterling Standard. It's amazing what happens when you stop funneling operational costs into shell companies and start investing in your engineers." "Evelyn," Olivia said, dryly taking a glass of sparkling water. "Touché," Evelyn laughed. "I must admit I was worried when you liquidated the overseas assets. But doubling down on domestic cybersecurity, genius." Olivia nodded politely, but her mind drifted. It was easy to be a genius when you weren't distracted by hiding an affair. She excused herself and walked toward the terrace. She needed a moment of air. As she looked out over Central Park, her phone buzzed. It was a notification from her security team, a standard monthly report on external risks. She opened the file. It contained 2 photos. The first photo was grainy, taken from a distance in a rainy parking lot in Columbus, Ohio. It showed a woman in a generic blue vest pushing a train of shopping carts back toward a department store. Her hair was frizzy, tied back in a messy bun. She looked tired. She looked older. It was Jessica. According to the report, Subject A was working 40 hours a week as a shift supervisor at a discount retailer. She lived in a studio apartment. Her social media accounts were permanently deleted as part of her plea deal to avoid jail time. The girl who had lived for likes, who had needed the world to watch her every move, was now sentenced to the worst punishment imaginable for a narcissist total obscurity. She was a ghost. Olivia swiped to the next photo. This one was a mugshot. Daniel Sterling. Inmate number 89,402. His hair was shaved close to his skull. The tan was gone, replaced by a sallow grey complexion. The arrogant sparkle in his eyes had been extinguished, leaving a hollow, haunted stare. The report noted that Daniel's appeals had been denied. He was working in the prison library for 12 cents an hour. The man who once tipped waiters $100 bills to feel powerful was now sorting paperback books for pocket change. Olivia stared at the photos. She expected to feel a surge of joy, a vindictive thrill, but she felt nothing. No anger. No pity. They were just data points. Old variables in an equation she had already solved. Thinking about them, Olivia turned. It was Arthur. He had followed her out. "I was just checking the trash folder," Olivia said, locking her phone and slipping it into her clutch, making sure it was empty. "They're calling you to the stage," Arthur said. You won the Executive of the Year award. Unanimous vote. Olivia straightened her blazer. Then let's not keep them waiting. As she walked back into the ballroom, the lights dimmed. The giant screen behind the stage illuminated with the Etheris Global logo, sharp, modern, and imposing. The presenter, a silver-haired tech mogul, leaned into the microphone. "They say that business is a man's world," the mogul said, "but occasionally someone comes along who reminds us that competence has no gender." She took a company on the brink of collapse, stripped away the rot, and rebuilt it into a fortress. She faced betrayal, public scandal, and financial ruin, and she turned it all into record-breaking profits. Ladies and gentlemen, the CEO of Etheris Global, Olivia Sterling. The applause was thunderous. It wasn't polite clapping. It was a roar. People stood up. Olivia ascended the stairs. She stood behind the podium looking out at the hundreds of faces. She saw the fear in her competitors' eyes. She saw the admiration in the younger women in the room. She didn't pull out a prepared speech. She gripped the sides of the podium and leaned in. 6 months ago. Olivia began, her voice echoing through the silent hall. I sat in a boardroom and listened to a man tell me that I was too cautious to lead. He told me that I didn't have the vision. He told me that my role was to support, not to command. She paused. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. We often confuse volume with power, Olivia continued. We think the person shouting the loudest or spending the most is the one in control. But real power isn't about noise. It's about leverage. It's about knowing the value of what you hold and being willing to burn the table down rather than sit at a bad deal. She looked directly into the camera lens, knowing that somewhere in a prison rec room or a break room in Ohio they might be watching. To anyone who thinks they can take what you have built, whether it is your career, your dignity, or your peace of mind, let this be a lesson. You can steal the title. You can steal the office. You can even steal the husband. A ripple of nervous laughter went through the crowd. Olivia smiled, cold and sharp. But you cannot steal the competence required to keep it. The crown is heavy, and if your neck is weak, it will break you. She lifted the heavy crystal trophy. This isn't for me, she said. This is for the women who stay silent while they reload. The game isn't over when they leave you. The game is over when you decide you've won. She walked off the stage to a standing ovation. Later that night, as her town car glided through the rain-slicked streets of Manhattan, Olivia looked out at the skyline. She passed the old apartment building where she and Daniel had lived when they were first married. She felt a faint pang of nostalgia, but it passed as quickly as the streetlights blurring by. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Martha. Board meeting tomorrow at 8 a.m. The Tokyo acquisition team is ready, Olivia typed back immediately. Tell them to be there at 7:30. We have work to do. She put the phone down and closed her eyes, resting her head against the cool leather seat. The mistress was gone. The husband was a memory. The wife was dead. Olivia Sterling opened her eyes. The CEO was just getting started. Wow. I don't know about you, but that ending gave me chills. Olivia didn't just win. She redefined the game. It's a brutal reminder that the best revenge isn't screaming or fighting. It's succeeding so hard that the people who hurt you become irrelevant footnotes in your biography. If this story satisfied your craving for justice, please hit that like button. It tells the algorithm to share this drama with more people. Make sure you are subscribed with notifications on, because in the next video, we're covering a story about a lottery winner whose family tried to have him committed to steal his ticket. You do not want to miss that. Thanks for watching, and remember, stay silent, stay dangerous.